And welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. This is a different way that we've done our podcast before. This is the first time we're actually using a live stream on YouTube. Oops, do some podcasting, but we're going to continue through this crisis that we're all affected by. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're in quarantine. I hope you're staying safe if you are an essential worker, and especially thank you to all the people working in hospitals now. I have a friend who is a nurse, so I can tell you firsthand it's rough out there. So everybody stay safe. Also, movies are still coming out. Movies are coming out, and I'm really honored to be joined by Jon Abrams, who directed and also stars in the film Clover, which opens this week. And Jon, how are you?
How you doing? Nice to be here.
Doing great. Yeah. How are you? This has really changed the game when it comes to distribution of independent films. I know that your movie was going to be released in theaters. I don't know if there are any theaters even open now, but before we talk about the film, let's talk about what's happening in our world, and especially with the world of independent film. How has this affected the release of Clover?
Well, how it's affected the release of Clover is Clover is an homage to sort of a lot of throwback kind of crime comedy films that I grew up loving, and also some midnight sort of culty films that I've always loved. And I made the movie for the movie theater. I still think of movies as opening in theaters. That's the experience I think of when I think of movies. And so it's, increasingly harder and harder to get movies to play in theaters. And, we were able to get a theatrical release for Clover. However, we all know what's going on. And so theaters are shuttered right now. So it's a disappointment. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but we are not alone. This is the entire world that is having to swallow some bitter pills and deal with many disappointments, some way worse than ours.
Yeah.
So, what can you do? And for us, the silver lining is that, yeah, like you said, movies are coming out anyway. I think when you make films, certainly when you make independent films, you always are concerned that they won't get a lot of reach, that they won't get eyes. Less and less so is the case with movie theaters anyway. People, that's not where the eyes are on a film. Mm-hmm. A film's presence is really online now. So we have that. So I'm hoping that, more people may see the film than would have had none of this other stuff been happening in the world.
I actually think it's a huge opportunity for independence, because if you think about it, independent filmmakers always have to compete for screens, right? You have to compete for I'm going to play in this screen, and Invisible Man is in every theater or whatever. But now independents are on an even level. I actually think that this is a positive thing for independent films. And while a lot of studios like Sony moved its entire slate to 2021, mm-hmm. while a lot of the major studios have moved their releases to fall or even next year, indie films just seem to be bumping them a couple weeks just to kind of let everybody know, hey, we're coming out on VOD. And this is where indie films thrive anyway. So if anything, it's leveled the playing field for independent filmmakers. I actually think it's a positive thing. It's an opportunity for audiences to discover so many new independent films that are coming to VOD and direct. I mean, look, you know what? I am that customer. I am the guy that I look at what's on Vudu or iTunes, and something looks good. Boom, for $10 to rent something or $20 to rent a lot of these films. It's cheaper than going to the theater. You know, it really is. And you can make your own old fashioned while you watch the film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You can
So
you can talk during the movie.
You can pause it. You can text. You can do whatever.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy it.
hopefully when you watch Clover, you don't do that. But sure, one could at home, which you
Well,
can't.
I will say, since the whole thing kicks off in a bar, that it's not a bad film to have an adult beverage while you watch it. It really, and I didn't realize, when I was pursuing, I wanted to interview the director. I didn't realize, I mean, your major part in the film,
Ooh, you
you're like a bit, you're one of the, I mean, lead actors, I mean, it's kind of crazy.
right.
How is that balancing? And Clover, I might say, is sort of like, I guess, see, I don't want to get too much into the story because there is such a great twist that completely changes the entire film. So you think you've seen one movie and you're seeing a completely different film. I love that. So I don't want to get into it, but it's an incredible, gritty crime drama with a great sense of humor, some really great characters, and I mean, you got Chazz Palminteri. I mean,
Sure.
so yeah, I mean, so let's talk about the cast first. How did you pull together such an amazing cast? Ron Perlman.
Right. So, like I said, I'm a big fan of cult films, and I am a certain age. I remember Ron Perlman from even the Beauty and the Beast television show back in the day, and Ice Pirates. I don't know if you remember a film called Ice Pirates.
I
I
do.
when I was young, and Ron's in that. I've been a fan for a long time, and he's been in some cool gangster crime films as well. Chazz, I'm a New Yorker, and we kind of ran the gambit. We wanted to we looked at like a lot of non-traditional ideas for that role as well, but I think Chazz came in and he was wonderful to work with. Like, we had limited time with him, and we really put him through the ringer, and he didn't complain once, and he was a champ. So it was great to work with him.
So yeah, like, I mean, there are some brutal scenes with him. I mean, he's a heavy. I
Brutal guy.
mean,
He's a brutal character, but not unjustified in his sort of means to his end. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think he's sort of, his character is legitimate in their desires. He's not like, in his world, he's not necessarily a bad guy. I mean, these people owe him money. He wants his money, and then subsequently things happen, and he wants vengeance. So it's legitimate.
how did you find the actress who plays Clover? I don't think I've seen her in anything.
Yeah. So Nicole Berger
Mhm.
played my daughter in my first film that I directed called All at Once. And a lot of the actors that were in All at Once are also in Clover. I like to build a repertory, and I think you can't buy chemistry. So as much as I can, I always like to work with people that I've either worked with before or are friends of mine in real life. Anything like that is going to add so much just in the ether. So Nicole played my daughter in my first film, which is about 5 years ago, and it's been fun kind of growing up with her. But we kind of, when initially coming up with the story for Clover and stuff, just immediately thought of her and thought she'd be great, and it worked out really well. We did a fair amount of work with her before filming. Definitely, like, wanted to give her some sort of like experiences that were relatable to things in the movie. So Mike Testone and I took her all around New York City one day and sort of mimicked the trajectory of the characters in the film as if we were on the run. You know, went from one end of New York City to the other via trains and on our feet, and sort of did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I say, I don't want to give too much away. If you're a fan of this genre, I mean, it's fantastic, and so you're in for a lot of fun and a lot of twists and a lot of, it's also the kind of like testosterone driven like crime film I don't think we've seen in a while.
Yeah. So, again, it's an homage to a lot of movies that they make less and less of now. Certainly, I don't see a lot of dramedies, and past that, I don't see a lot of crime comedies. And there's a lot of inspirations for Clover, and most of them are throwback films. Yeah, so it definitely takes its hands from the more kind of testosterone-driven movies that they used to make. I mean, if there is any message to the film, I would say that it's that yes, men sort of run the world, but women have to clean up the mess that they make always. And so, that was sort of an important thing for me to design into the movie as well, because I didn't want it to just be this sort of misogynistic film, right?
Now, how did you, I always find it fascinating, directors who act in their own films. I think one of those jobs is hard enough, especially on an indie level. Independent films, you're already behind the eight ball in terms of you don't have all the endless resources that a film studio has, right? So how did you juggle that? And you're in a lot of scenes. I mean, like most of the movies, so.
Yeah, yeah. I always say this, like acting and directing simultaneously is not hard for me. I know that that's at least one actor that's going to listen to me, director. So, that makes it a little easier. And I have people that I trust behind the monitor kind of watching me as an actor and sort of coaching me a little bit if I need it. So there's that. So I don't have to worry about that too much. Yeah, I don't find that to be the hardest part of making movies or directing and acting in movies. I would say that it wasn't my intention initially to act in Clover. I was just going to direct it, but at a certain point, it just became kind of obvious that I was going to know that tension field better than other people might. So that's how it came about. Yeah.
Gotcha. How do you, this is one of the big challenges that a lot of indie filmmakers face is fundraising. How do you put together, I mean, you've directed a film before this, which is, that's always, you've got the leg up, right? Because now you have the experience, but how did you pull together? Then you mentioned that the last film was 5 years ago. I feel like, there's indie filmmakers have to do everything, right? They have to do all the jobs, and including the job now you're promoting and pushing the film as it opens, as it comes out this Friday. Is it April 3rd? Friday, April 3rd?
This Friday, April 3rd, it is available on demand everywhere.
Awesome. So what goes into the fundraising aspect?
Well, you're going to want to find a financier. And usually the way that works is you go and look towards the foreign markets for the money, and you pre-sell the foreign to, this is the way major movies are made as well, not just indie films, but and television for that matter. I don't think any of this stuff is a secret, but yeah, you want to pre-sell the foreign, and then take that money to fund the production. And then however you end up distributing domestically is a bonus, sort of. That's generally how it works. Our situation is slightly different. We have a financier who's very gracious and, loves the whole part of the process and is very supportive, and has also sort of been working from the ground up with us over this time. So we've been growing with them, and yeah, but that's not standard. Standard is really, it still takes forever. It doesn't matter. Even with our situation, it takes forever, and you have to do a lot to get to a point where you're making a film, even if the budget's 20 grand. Look at Robert Rodriguez. He almost had to lose an arm to make a movie. So.
Right. Well, did he put himself up for medical experiments, right? That was how he got money for El Mariachi.
That's right. And his arm went gangrene and he almost lost it.
Oh my God.
You got to die for your art.
How does it, so now that you've screened it for audiences, before the world imploded,
Yeah.
you were able to screen it for audiences. What's that like?
Well, we weren't really, right? We weren't able to come out in theaters. So,
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
but we did have some test screenings, and I mean, that's the greatest joy for me, is getting to see people's reactions to something you make. That's what it's about. Whether they like it or not is not my business. My business is just that they have a reaction, I guess. So in this case, I'm hoping that we're able to provide some escapism and entertainment in these times. And I think Clover is a throwback film in that sense as well. Is that it's not a message movie. It's it's entertainment. It's a fun story to get involved in, and like you said, there is a big twist that throws you on your head a little bit. But yeah, so hopefully we get some people escaping their quarantine in a mindset.
Well, as a member of your audience, having seen the film, there are shocking moments, and more than one shocking moment that uh, I again, I don't want to give too much away. You can watch the trailer actually. And I think on our Film Threat YouTube channel, we have an exclusive clip that you've allowed us graciously allowed us to release
Yeah.
to people to check it out. It definitely, I love that kind of, because the types of indie films that we see, I haven't seen a film like this indie in a long time. So it's a
Oh,
breath of fresh air.
thank you
And
so.
and the cast is great, from the faces I recognize both to like everyone else. How did you pull together the rest of the cast? I mean, you mentioned that they were in your previous film, some of the actors.
Yeah, sure. So, they're either in previous films of mine, or I worked with them as an actor in films. That's certainly the case with Julia Jones, who has recently been seen on The Mandalorian, and in Westworld. We worked on a film called Missed Connections a number of years ago, and Erica Christensen is a really good friend of ours. She's like our sister, so she was in All at Once as well. And like I said, I try to put friends in the movies as much as possible. There's a lot of people, because we made our first film in Buffalo, and we also made Clover in Buffalo, New York. There's a lot of people from Buffalo's film community, which is actually a great little film community, that we got to be involved in both films as well. And in some cases, there are actors in Clover that I may not have worked with directly, or as an actor or as a director, but other cast members had, and so they were like, "Hey, what about this person? He's great," and it just worked out that we got them involved. Louie Lombardi would be one, great character actor in a lot of mob pictures, and famously Johnny Cakes from The Sopranos.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I'm a big character guy. I love characters. I love character actors. I've tried to make my career as an actor that as well, as opposed to trying to be a leading man or a household name. I always appreciate the people who their face, and it brought you some joy somewhere, but you don't know their name. Yeah, so um, it's about that, and then it's also, like I said, about the fact that you just can't buy chemistry. So anytime, whether you know the person personally and have worked with them, or somebody else in the movie does, when they show up and it goes on film, there's just something there in the ether that you can't buy otherwise. And on movies, and certainly indie movies, you have no time for rehearsal. I mean, you have very little rehearsal time. So you don't have a lot of time to create all this chemistry and stuff quite often. So always a good shot to try and get it where it's already built in, you know? Mark Webber, who plays my brother, I've known for 25 years. We had never worked together, but we both came up in New York City as actors, and so would see each other at auditions all the time. And we're both kind of indie film actors for a long time. And I just knew that would be great if we got him to play Jackie, my brother. That the history there would just translate instantly. So, and I think it did. So.
Oh, it definitely did. You guys are like definitely the rival brothers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Mike Testone, the writer of the film, has two brothers, so they're Irish triplets, actually, and so a lot of that is built into the script as well from his own experiences.
I want to ask. I like to ask indie filmmakers like what piece of advice would you impart? And if you had like a really close friend who was going to, direct their very first movie, what's the one piece of advice that you would give your friend? The one thing they really need to know that would have an impact on the quality or their experience actually making an indie film for the first time?
Great question. Three things: patience. Four things, actually. Patience. Don't be a perfectionist. You can't be, and you have to be willing to collaborate, and you have to be loose with things. So much happens in the edit that you may not have planned for, but also I think preparation is very important. Be prepared. The more preparation you can do, especially because you have limited time, once you're up and going, it's like being shot out of a cannon. It really is. And I like that tension field, but for others it may be difficult. But if you're prepared, at least you're going to know how to fly as that cannonball a little bit, so to speak. And then, this is cliche, but it's Murphy's Law making movies. It really is. Anything that's going to go wrong is going to go wrong, or that can go wrong is going to go wrong. So you just got to know that and go with the flow. You can't be so held on to things. And that's also like why I say don't be a perfectionist, because if you're not willing to let go of things, it's going to be a disaster and you're going to be really sad. You have to be flexible. You're never going to get all the things you want to get. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah.
Well, the movie is Clover. It comes out, and give all the social and the website and everything so people can check out the movie.
Okay, so the movie's called Clover. It is available on all video on demand services April 3rd. There is a pre-order on iTunes currently. You can go pre-order it. The soundtrack to the film is being released on Mad Decent Records, which is Diplo's label. It's produced by Leon Michaels of El Michaels Affair. It is a classic inspired by throwback movie soundtracks. Ennio Morricone and Quincy Jones's soundtracks and others. So check that out, and you can follow Mad Decent at Mad Decent on Instagram. And please follow us on @Clover_movie on Instagram, @Clover_movie on Instagram for updates. And you can follow me @The Real Jon Abrahams on Instagram.
That's awesome.
That good?
Jon, thank you so much for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast. There's no competition. No other movies are opening on Friday. Clover's the only one. So you have to see it. You have to see it. So check it out, everyone. Thanks for checking out and watching the Film Threat podcast, and go check out Clover. Jon, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Cool.
Enjoy the movie. Bye, y'all.